So you basically are an example for us that nothing can stop anybody.
But I don't achieve it on my own. And you're right, anything
Yes.
is possible, but you have to have that allyship.
Correct.
You have to have people that take you seriously, even though you may look, communicate, see the world distinctly differently. You need people with open hearts and open minds, and you need systems that are going to look after you.
Let's discuss about your therapy, which is the Neuroaffirming Therapy. Could you please elaborate on that?
Often a lot of the therapies prioritize conformity, whereas in neuroaffirming, you start with the person, you prioritize them, and then you look at the systems and the connections and what's helpful for them to know. Well, how do I know what's helpful for them to know? I have to ask them. Whether I work in a school or a prison setting or a refugee camp, you have to look at all the systems around that young person. Who are the pillars that support them? We're not independent beings, we're interdependent.
True.
And to encourage people to be independent is very, very lonely. And I think typically autistic people have found themselves as being independent because they find it difficult to ask for help.
So welcome both of you to the Dolly Show today. I'm really glad that y'all are here. And to be very frank, we have a beautiful combination. So here we have our professional, who is Rhea. And we have Emmeline, who is an individual on the spectrum. So a beautiful combination and amazing conversations that we're going to have today. And both of you, I'm really, really grateful to you that you all are here with us today.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for having us.
Pleasure. Pleasure is all ours. So yes, let's start our conversation, which is really going to be interesting. First, over to you, Rhea. I would love to know about your journey. What made you come into this field, this world? Please let us know.
So, I initially pursued my bachelor's in psychology from St. Xavier's College, and then I moved on to pursuing my master's in clinical psychology. And during the course of our program, that was a 2-year program, we were placed in different hospitals across the city. And something that initially intrigued me was the whole testing, assessment, diagnostics bit. And, the ability to explore cognitive abilities, behavior patterns to data. But then over a period of time, I realized that I was also inclined to the therapeutic aspects, right? So after you create that comprehensive report based on test scores and interaction, you're also planning for therapy or sessions with the client post that. And I realized that just a report or just the diagnostic score just gives you that one aspect or one perspective about the entire life of that individual. It's just a part of the story. And that's what made me then pursue therapeutic aspects and counseling more as compared to the clinical. And I wanted to understand people more as whole individuals and work with children specifically. And that's what then led me to move towards a school setup. And again, working in a school setup gives you that tendency to work with learners who are across, like it's a broad spectrum, right? There may be some who you're working with in terms of crisis management. On the other hand, there may be some who you're working with who's just navigating through friendships and the nitty-gritties of their daily life. So again, coming back to my passion for working with children is what brought me to a school setup. And I really enjoy working alongside Emmeline, who's also joined 2 years ago, and we have a really great rapport relationship when it comes to working together. We'll talk about that as well.
Yes, definitely. I'm looking forward to it. Okay, a very inspiring and so to say a very interesting journey that you have. And I think somewhere a lot of passion and her interest is what has brought you into this field. Wow, very nice. Emmeline, hello. I am really, really excited to get a lot of information from you. So first, let's start with your journey. You being a neurodivergent, how have you inspired the world and how are you taking your journey forward? I would love to know that.
It's a big question, isn't it? Well, first of all, I identify as neurodistinct. I wouldn't say I was neurodivergent because I think that sounds like I was on a road and I went on the wrong road.
Wow.
So I'm neurodistinct. And my way of being is I'm autistic, dyslexic, and I have ADHD. So it's a beautifully wild combination. And I am also the mother of 3 sons.
Yes.
That I've had over 3 decades in very unusual circumstances in different countries all over the world.
Wow. I would love to know that as well.
So, I mean, what inspired me to do what I do is because I think, my neurodistinction is every part of my being. It's the way I live. It's the way I learn. It's the way I connect. It enables me to take risks and think about what happens afterwards, instead of being very anxious about decisions, I suppose. What else? I've always, because as a child, I knew I didn't fit in. I couldn't, as a dyslexic person, I couldn't read or write. I was always falling off chairs. People were laughing at me. I loved people, but I was fascinated by them. I didn't really understand friendship. So I knew I felt very, very different. I was very kind. And I had this, and I really noticed people that weren't noticed, or people that were finding situations difficult, or people that didn't have a sense of belonging. Or another way of putting it is like, you're in a system like a school, and then there are people that fall between the cracks. And those people have amazing potential. And I just remember thinking, why aren't they? Where's their voice? So I think one of the lovely things about certainly being autistic is you have a deep sense of justice within you. So for me, it's about, this is what's driven me to say, well, where are these people's voices? Why is it that some people get a voice and other people don't? So that's really what's driven me. And wherever I've worked, in whatever settings, it's all about finding those people that don't have a voice and advocating for them. And the therapeutic and the special education side comes in with, I have some tools and some experience and some education around that as well. So it's lived experience, education, and allyship that brings me to do what I do.
Fabulous. So you basically are an example for us that nothing can stop anybody. And y'all are doing wonders. Believe me. And it's an incredible thing that y'all are doing. And I would like to take this opportunity to applaud for y'all, because whatever y'all are achieving, it is commendable.
But I don't achieve it on my own. And you're right, anything is possible, but you have to have that allyship. You have to have people that take you seriously, even though you may communicate, see the world distinctly differently. You need people with open hearts and open minds. And you need systems that are going to look after you.
Correct.
Because it's difficult, because many people in my position don't have that. And it's very difficult for them to even put one step after the other. They fall out of school systems, they estrange from their families, they don't have meaningful relationships. And I'm ever grateful for the people that I've met along my journey, that I've reached out to, or they've reached out to me, because you can't do it alone.
Correct.
And that is so important. And so many autistic people feel like they are on their own because of the way that they communicate. People stop communicating back because they don't get it, or they think they're being ignored, or they think, well, that person's a bit strange. And people are a little bit nervous if they don't understand, So you can't, this is a neurotypical world. I've traveled the world, and all the world is neurotypical. That's the way the systems are in place. So you have to have those allies, and things like the Dolly Show and the Autism Connect, having that conversation out there, aren't there?
Correct.
And that's what you need. Lots of different organisations that are going to fly the flag, so lots more people can achieve.
Exactly. Wow. So further, we will discuss how can we make this world. So we both have to come midway, right? As you said, you need alliance. You cannot do it alone. So we'll talk about it further. Before that, let's come back to Rhea. So how do you use the sensory-based methods for these children on the autism spectrum, and what is the importance of it?
So I think when it comes to counseling in a school setup, you'd usually think of a counselor sitting in her cabin or in her room, and maybe a child or an adolescent on the other side, and they're talking and having conversations. But when you look at sensory modalities that are used with learners, and this can be with learners in the primary and even in the secondary section at times, you're helping them to process their emotions and express themselves in ways other than just verbal expression, right? So if you look at art can be used creatively in the form of whether it's painting, drawing, making, creating things together. Something as simple as junk modeling or putting together something that probably didn't have used initially to create something that has more meaning and purpose, right? So all of this is tied to working with learners, both neurodivergent as well as neurotypical, in ways to help them process their feelings, communicate complex emotions in different ways. If you look at movement, sometimes there are simple body awareness exercises, or sometimes just jumping, stretching, having a trumpet in your room can help them in terms of their sensory regulation. And then again, if you look at maybe play-based therapeutic methods, there's storytelling involved, there's creating scenes and scenarios. So there again, it allows the learner, right, to go beyond just a conversation, but to bring in aspects of creativity, to bring in their little world into the setting.
Correct.
And I think there again, all these different modalities may be a little different from the traditional paper pencil worksheets or talking. And it goes into hands-on experiential learning as well. And it also gives these learners agency, right? Because they can navigate through their play. They can navigate through storytelling, role plays. And again, that aligns even with the IB philosophy of agency and voice, choice, and ownership. And that's something that we tend to integrate into our counseling.
Yeah. Wow. To be very frank, sounds very interesting. Because, what you said, even for me, I typically understand that when you go to a therapist, a psychologist, yes, there's a chair, the psychologist sitting there, and then there is the child or the parent who's sitting there. So yes, I have also imagined it in that way. You have changed my perception today.
We do sessions for adults.
Okay.
Well, and probably initially so that they could understand how we work with their young people, but also a lot of them, didn't they, share that they got benefits. We've done a number of sessions in adults.
And I think it was also nice to see how they were more free during the session, right? Because again, it's not very structured. Right? You may be semi-structured or completely unstructured, where you are driving the process. And then that's where, adults can be like, hey, you know what? I can actually do this even back at home.
Yeah, which is so important because
absolutely,
you being in that setup at that point of time, yes, you do it. But what about the real world?
Exactly.
Your house, being in the social setup. So all those things need to be incorporated. Yes, that's where the play comes around.
And I think for me, traditional counselling doesn't work because a number of reasons. Because it can't just happen in an hour and then you open the door and off you go.
Yeah,
you have to spill out the door. And for us, we spill out the counselling room into the school, into the community. You don't just stay behind a shut door doing something, because that breeds some sort of secrecy, or the idea that kind of therapy is kind of untouchable. And I was thinking and also traditional counselling models are very geared to your neurotypical person, because they're thinking about, that you are going to be able to say what your feelings are. You're going to sit opposite somebody. You're going to talk. You're going to do it all through verbal communication. Well, that's not necessarily a very helpful way for an autistic person to do it, or a non-verbal person, or a person in trauma. We have to create a space where people really feel comfortable in order to connect. We don't, we come from a place of respect. When you meet that person, you respect them. You're not automatically thinking, oh my goodness, you've been sent here because of some behavior change. We don't want deficit models. You are a beautiful being in our space. How can we enhance your learning? How can we help you understand more about yourself and the way you perceive and connect with the world? And it's got to start with them. It's got to be the humanistic model, rather than we put it upon you. What Rhea said before about agency. So often you think of therapy as a medical model where you are done to.
Correct.
This is where actually you're in the driving seat, because once you leave this room, who's in charge? We're not in charge. You're in charge of you.
True that.
So it's so important that these alternative therapies aren't just for people with autism, but actually they're for everybody. Everybody thrives in this kind of setup. What do you say?
True that. I so resonate with what she said right now. So yes, taking this conversation forward, let's discuss about your therapy, which is the neuroaffirming therapy. Could you please elaborate on that?
Yes, a little bit about what I said. It's not like I don't prioritize conformity. Often a lot of the therapies prioritize conformity, whereas in neuroaffirming, you start with the person who prioritizes them, and then you look at the systems and the connections and what's helpful for them to know. Well, how do I know what's helpful for them to know? I have to ask them, and whether I work in a school or a prison setting or a refugee camp, you have to look at all the systems around that young person. Who are the pillars that support them? Because we aren't, we're not independent beings, we're interdependent.
True.
And to encourage people to be independent is very, very lonely. And I think typically autistic people have found themselves as being independent because they find it difficult to ask for help, because they are so much of the asking for help it's gone on deaf ears because people don't know how to help, or they give them neurotypical suggestions which don't work, So you have to I start with the person. So it's about affirming who you are, finding out who you are, finding out your ways of expressing, and if you have that, if you can let go of the rigid ways that therapy is traditionally practiced, and you can do something where people can find their way. We both have counselling rooms, if you like, with beautiful things in that you want to touch, and you're allowed to touch and smell and explore. And we notice, don't we, where young people gravitate towards. They find what they need, what they connect with.
I think that again comes to the agency bit. So sometimes when we're setting up resources in the room, we know that a particular learner, we reach out to certain things. Right? So we have our room set up with those resources that they would resonate with. And then you can see that they have the agency to then plan a session as well. So we also encourage that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we even see when the adults come in our room, don't we? We see where they go to. There's lots and lots of adults connect with us as well. You think school counsellors is all about working with young people, but actually it's systemic. You're working with their families, you're working with their teachers, you're working with the administration. It's none of us are like individuals, doing little things in a different part. We're reaching out and connecting, and that's a really big part of our working hard to connect with people.
Wow, fantastic. I mean, very person-centric. And I think that's the key.
Yeah, we don't want to push anyone into a model of therapy.
Correct.
They need to find their model. And of course, we've got lots of experience, so we can set things up for them to try. And also to understand that some things, I love it when young people go, well, that didn't work. So we're one step nearer to finding what might work. And even when it does work, it might not work next week, because there's so many variables in our lives. And it's like feeling comfortable with not knowing, and feeling comfortable with unpredictability, and feeling comfortable that you have the answers.
Correct.
That you're not sitting across somebody that's going to tell you what to do and life will be rosy, because we're always changing, aren't we? And our variables are changing, our circumstances are changing. It's ridiculous to think that we had a model for everyone.
Correct. Speaking about circumstances, so you have been into various circumstances, being in prison, working in camps, working for a center. So you have played a number of roles.
Yes.
So I would love to know about that.
Well, I've always worked with people. I think my passion interest is people, and it doesn't matter if they're this big or this big. It doesn't matter if they're in the school or if they're mixed up in judicial systems. or if they've had everything taken away from them, like in their refugee setup. People are people, and I think like I said right from the beginning, the heart of me was wanting everybody's voice to be heard. Everybody has a story to tell, and those stories shape lives, right? So not shaping lives is just horrible if you can't shape your own life. And I think, in order to get the tools, I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't really know, was there a job to do it or how do you do it? So I think I started off in many different guises. I have been a refugee resettlement worker. I did train as a special education teacher before I became a psychotherapist. There's many different things actually that I've trained in: art therapy and expressive art therapy. I was an actress once a long time ago. All these things I've supported. They're like pillars, that are picked together that I can draw upon to support people, but always the same. It's people. And more, it's not really, it's support the systems around them, but enable them in it. And it doesn't matter who you are. I think that's the beautiful thing about autistic people, or me particularly. I think there's no judgment there. I never really understand the world at all. So I have to seek to understand everything. So as soon as I meet someone, I seek to understand. I don't have a preconceived idea. So it doesn't matter where they are, what they're wearing, in which centre, how much they can pay me, how much they can't pay me. It doesn't matter. I'm really interested in their story, and who they are as a person, and how that voice can be heard and how that can lead them to opportunity. So for me, it's all one. Yes, I've worked in all these different settings, many different settings, and I've had so many different jobs. And my first job, because I left school with no qualifications whatsoever, because I couldn't read, and so therefore my intelligence wasn't measured at school. I had to go on and do adult education and lots of different courses along the way, but was working in a supermarket. And I think that was one of the most helpful things I ever did. I learned to get on with people. I learned to work hard. I learned to keep time. I learned to have pride in my job. I learned so much in that year, far more than I did at, say, in a university.
Wow.
And I think because I was open-minded to the people I met, and they were so supportive. I didn't have a no. I mean, with dyslexia comes disorganization and I realized very soon in a supermarket I got annoyed by people. So I switched to nights, so that I could stack shelves and they'd look beautiful, and just speak with my colleagues, But I knew after a year of doing that, as much as I loved it, I felt I don't want to do it till I'm 60, So then I pursued other things, and I've done so many different jobs, like being in the travelling theatre company, and I went and picked apples. I learned to drive an apple picker, and I picked apples for a year in Asia. I worked on a yacht in Israel. I've worked in education for a long time now. Before that, I worked as a nanny. I've worked as a tour guide. There's so many different jobs that I've done, and I think that really suits my ADHD. And a lot of people go, well, why can't you make up your mind? To me, I have made up my mind. I want to work with people. I want to enable people. I want to hear their voices. And in all those jobs, I did it. And each job gave me an extra layer. I've never stopped learning. And I've learned so much this year and last year working with Rhea. It hasn't stopped, And
fantastic.
So my journey is, it's quite like a mosaic.
But it's beautiful.
It was
colourful.
It's not gone the traditional way through life promotions. I was a principal of a school. In Italy, I have done those kind of leadership roles, but they're not really for me. I mean, it was for me at that time, but it wouldn't be now. There's so much bureaucracy. I'll be banging my head against a brick wall and fighting with everybody. But I think as soon as you, this is brilliant because we can get voices heard through this kind of form. But as soon as you often move into sort of leadership positions, you move away from the people, and it's the people that inspire me, and you're stuck with policies and procedures, and sometimes they are huge. Well, often they're huge barriers.
Correct. So true.
Accepting and to access they're supposed to be there to support you, but they're like barbed wire trying to get anything done, aren't they? We found that definitely bonded over that, don't we?
Yeah.
Whatever you've spoken right now feels like you're talking about my life and my story. Believe me, I can totally resonate to what you're saying, because throughout my journey as well, I have switched jobs because at one particular time my interest was something else. Now it's something else, and I don't know what the future has to unfold. So believe me, there's a major connect that I don't know, some way I'm finding my answers. Wow, this is very fascinating. So you said you have been in so many setups and all those kind of things. How have you then managed your children, your house? It's a question that, I really want to know. How do you do that?
Well, beautifully here in India, because I have someone to help me.
That's why I never want to leave India.
But it's made me very resourceful, because like in the UK and that, I had to learn to fix cars, to do central heating systems, to paint, to decorate, and all of those things. I had many different jobs. I think I've got 3 boys. My youngest one he's lived in India and China and Germany, and he's had more, as I have. I don't know. My eldest 2 are very, very resourceful. They cook, they clean, they can build, they could do house DIY, they can do everything because they had to. My youngest one, he's had a more comfortable life, and he loves that. And he thinks about his brothers. He's like, oh my goodness, they had it so hard. But actually, he doesn't have the tools yet. He will a summer with them, and he will be in an apprenticeship with his brothers, and he will learn to do all those things. But I think having ADHD, when managed correctly and passionately, you have so much energy. I think that helps. I think that my passion drives me forward. So as my houses have been a huge, colourful calamities, probably, to anyone going in, because I just see the schema. My focus is on what I want to do and my passion. The house, my older boys, who are in their 20s or 30s, they would tell you, they can remember on a Friday when I used to live in the UK, for example, I hadn't had time to wash up all week. We'd be eating our breakfast out of saucepans because we had nothing left to, and then we just blitz everything on at the weekends and just clean and manage. But I did get behind with bills and things and all of those, but you pay them when you get a red letter. In England, you get said red letter for anything. And in India, I know you just get cut off, don't you? I've noticed that. But then here it's easier for me to manage because I have been cut off, but I've always found really lovely people who will go and pay the bill for me. I give them the money, but there's people to help you here. And I don't need to go to the post office. Somebody else, I'll ask somebody, do you mind going to the post office with me? Anyway, sure. There's a job for everybody in that way. So I'm glad I don't do everything. It's been given me more freedom to work on my own health and, just to have more meaningful relationships with my youngest son in a way because I've got more time now.
Okay, so over to you, Rhea. So you, as we are talking about work, and Emmeline has done so much. Now let's discuss. You two work together. So how has that experience been? Be truthful.
Well, I will be truthful. It has been really enriching. Of course, we are different individuals.
Yes.
And, sometimes we may have our different ways of working as well. But I think our vision is at the core, right? Where we look at each child again holistically as individuals, as human beings. And there is when we move on with regard to building plans for them or working as a team with other stakeholders. So having the individual at the center is what we resonate with. Another thing that I think we that helps us in our collaboration is the whole DIJ bit, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and even belonging.
Yeah.
And that's something that really connects us together because we do have a lot of advocacy for DIJ in our field as well as beyond. And that's what ties us together even in practice. When you look at another thing I think that brings us together is the whole learning aspect, right? Emmeline, in spite of all her experience, there are times where she'll still reach out for recommendations or, for suggestions.
Many times.
Yeah. And I think another thing that we do is bounce off ideas each other, which, whether it's for a workshop, a session we're facilitating together, I think that really helps. So you know that you can collaborate openly rather than always being concerned about, oh my gosh, she's got so much experience, or vice versa as well. Right? So I think being valued there as well as a professional is what matters, and working together to help the individual in front of us.
Yeah, and really good. And I don't want Rhea to get embarrassed, but I think she does know that she is I mean, she's younger than me visually. You can see that. But she is one of the youngest, excellent professionals that I've seen in mental health ever. So it's a total honour. It is no, and I know you don't like me saying that, but she doesn't realise, and so it is a real honour to work with her. And I always say that Rhea's not really my co-worker, she's my co-thinker.
Oh, wow. I love her tones.
And definitely an ally, because like in India, I wouldn't have got on so well if I didn't have Rhea. Because, Rhea doesn't look at me, oh God, who's this coming in, this very loud professional who's usually very oddly dressed and forgets everybody's names and cannot spell. She's never looked at my professionalism through those kinds of lenses that often people do look. So I've never had to battle to find a space where I am. And we are lucky. We work in a team of people who also share that vision, don't we? We work in what's called a student success team, and they share our vision. So we're nested there with a voice. And I think that it's beautifully enabling, don't you think?
And I think it's easier then to also work in for whatever cause you are working with. You have people who resonate from the same vision that you have.
Yeah. But I mean, we do have different, we collaborate a lot, but we have very different ways where Rhea really helps me with my organisation. I might vomit all my ideas on a page and you will draw it together and put it in some kind of order. Or sometimes my ideas can be a bit like they aren't going to work. And Rhea's my voice of reason, without being limited. And I love the way sometimes she lets me just do it and then be like, without judgment,
I'd like to connect that to the bit that Emmeline has also brought in, right? Your messy play. So we talked about sensory methods, something that she, I think it's a huge thing, like a huge takeaway, and something that you can actually learn is you don't have to be organized
all the time,
perfect, right? And that's what learners need to learn as well, because in a school setup, even if it's a group, right, they want to know what the other's doing, or they may have that internal kind of judgment with regard to themselves as well. And over here, she sets up this table with things like pasta and foam and water and food coloring, and then they can just engage and be free, right? And the same way they're processing emotions, they're learning to navigate through conversations with each other at times, social situations as well, probably learn how to share things. So there's so much learning involved in that messy play. But for someone who comes probably from a different perspective, that may just be a mess. Right? So I think, and it is make a mess. But there's a lot of learning that goes. So I think that is one of the things that I've also kind of taken on into my practice.
And you've got so free with it as well, haven't you? I think there's something beautiful when you put something on a table that a child maybe normally sees in a kitchen or in a bathroom, like soap or foam or something. You put them all together, it jolts their thinking. So they've come in from a classroom maybe where they are taught to think in a certain way, or they feel like they should. And then suddenly you're jogging. Oh, what's this? And then it sort of gets them into a different pace of thinking. What so often they used to say, what am I supposed to do? And then we were like, then but they can't stop touching, feeling, and then they begin to unravel.
Even take time, like in the first session, we will just look. We slowly start to explore. I think that's again a huge
correct.
And learning that there doesn't have to be like this shiny outcome. You can do things in the moment. You can process, just like you process your emotions. It doesn't happen when you want it to happen, does it? It comes when it's ready, And I think we do a lot of that kind of it. And we've had to kick against systems to do it big time. Because people don't understand why we have such things. I have a huge box and, big like sari curtains everywhere. Like, I must say, to be respectful, the food and everything that we use, the rice and the flour is out of date, or it's got those terrible creatures in it, like hand sanitizers. But we don't wastefully use resources. They're usually repurposed. For different things. And then we have little people and figures and that they move around. And it's a very beautiful sight to watch that kind of inclusive play, because we have learners, don't we, from so many, they have so many different styles of learning. Say we have young people that don't engage in, say, lessons in class unless they have an assistant. So the young people are already, that's such and such, they have an assistant, but they come into our room and they're at the same level as their peers. They're engaging in the same play. And it doesn't have to be all about communication. It could be moving, talking, swapping, and then watching them swap with you and connect with you. That doesn't necessarily need to be through language.
And then again, with the ability for them to just be as they are. Without having to want you to complete so-and-so task within so-and-so task.
Yeah, and you need to have this particular result, or there's a typical a judgment or a gauge that these the society has made, that this is the meter and this is how you will be judged.
Yes.
So you need to drop that off and just be you and feel the thing, rather than jumping to results. That this is what you have to achieve. You have to achieve the rat race.
And you know what? Humans have been achieving forever. They don't need to have this framework always.
Exactly.
The framework might works for a majority of people. But if you don't fit in that framework, then we need to change that framework, because it should be inclusive.
Exactly.
We shouldn't just okay, you guys, you can succeed. And because people that succeed in work tend to get jobs where they have a voice.
True.
So where are the voices of the rest? It's not fair, and it's not just, more importantly, to have those kind of, I think we try and battle that outside when we're talking to educators and administration about what they're doing in classrooms. And we have seen practice change, haven't we? Not just in our setting, in our counselling setting, but certainly in our department, wouldn't you say?
And I think even then, when it comes to the UDL, right, Universal Design for Learning, that's where we try to incorporate those aspects in sessions, but also taken beyond to the school as well. And so, for example, if you look at UDL, it talks of 3 areas, right? First is the different modes of representation. That's a thing. Then it moves on to different modes of expression. And then it looks at different modes of engagement. So, for example, in a session, suppose you have a learner who learns more visually, right? You would have certain visual aids ready, or probably while sharing something with them verbally, you also supplement that with certain drawings, or you engage them in drawings, right? When you look at the next part, that is the expression, which it goes back to the sensory modalities. They are allowed to be themselves, to explore through something that resonates with them, whether it's art, whether it's play, whether it's sport. We also tend to incorporate games and sports swimming sessions. And then it moves on to engagement, right? So if you know that there's a learner who does well in a group setting, that's how you structure both the environment as well as the group. And if you know that probably they do better individually, or maybe even in a whole class, then we go back to the classroom to work along with teachers.
Or bring them all into
one of our rooms,
whole classes sometimes as well.
And then it goes back to teachers, right? And how the educators in school can then either set up their spaces differently, add certain calming corners, build on resources like sensory toolkits, or maybe just the seating arrangement where you could probably advocate for wobbly stools for learners who have movement seeking needs.
Because so many teachers will say, can you work with this young person. They never listen to what I'm saying. They never follow instructions. They don't pick up.
So hard for them to sit straight.
Yeah, and so one of the beautiful things that we say is, well, you come to our room with them, and your class. So we're not like, come with us, and we'll set something up, and then they'll see, oh, that child is really engaging. That child can do this, and this, and because we've tried to make our rooms, with that universal model, because that means that then they can think, okay, so how can I make my learning setting, the classroom or the home, a little bit more able to, classroom should let everybody thrive. You shouldn't have people coming out learning somewhere else. Ultimately, the ideal is that everyone should be able to thrive. It's not. We still recognise that some people might want to come out, and that should be allowed because they might want to, find it difficult to concentrate with lots of different people, and you are in a setting with lots of people. But there should be spaces for that, so people can. And yourself, sometimes you're like really sociable and you want to be in a crowd, and other days you don't. So this isn't just for neurodivergent learners; it's for everybody.
True.
Everybody, so that they can learn to their pattern and to their rhythm. And not be forced to sort of like, you do a half job, don't you? If you're forced to do something, it's a half job.
True.
You do, like, if you got me to dance to some Indian music, I'd love it, but I wouldn't look so good. You asked me to do something that I would country dancing music in the UK. I think, oh, she's a good dancer. So I'd feel more confident. So I think it's really, really good to give people those opportunities to take their learning where they need to learn.
And I think something that connects that is also the whole body listening aspect. Right? Very often in classes, you may have a poster put up explaining what whole body listening looks like, and sometimes there are these misconceptions where you've got to sit straight, you've got to have your hands in your lap, you've got to look at the speaker. And helping educators understand that whole body listening may look different for someone, for everyone, right? For me, for example, I may need a little fidget tool in my hand in order to concentrate to what the teacher is saying. Or for someone else, it could be probably taking a movement break and coming back, but I'm still listening, right? And it can look different, and I think that's important. Like there's awareness spread about that in school setups as well.
Yeah, you don't, because we speak to. I spoke to a young person the other week who was telling me that they didn't learn anything in class because they were concentrating on sitting still and holding on to. Actually, they were holding on to the desk. They told me like this. And so they didn't learn anything but as far as their parents knew and as far as what was communicated back home, they did really well today. But that child isn't saying to me, it's really boring, I didn't learn anything, or I just had to concentrate on sitting still. Had that child been able to roam a little bit, which they do now, they could have learned. It's just that learning looks different, just because you're seated doesn't mean that
you were concentrating.
Yeah. If you have to concentrate on sitting still, then you're using up your brain needlessly.
Wow. new aspects that I'm learning today. Believe me, they are really, really fascinating for me. Believe me. When I say this, they're eye-openers for me. So moving forward, I would love to know in depth about your profession and what all practices that you all put into place. You and you as well.
Yeah, so maybe we'll begin with what it looks like at school and what our role entails. So as a school counselor, it's much more than just sessions when we learn it, right? So even though we do have individual sessions, group sessions, whole class sessions, or have classes in our homes, we go beyond to collaborate with parents and families, to collaborate with teachers, which is so important, right? When you're working with a child, not just in your specific room, but then the teacher having to work with them in class as well. So helping them with certain strategies, or they share certain things that they have been doing, and then we look at, what's working, what's not working, what can we try differently. We then move on to working and collaborating with external professionals. For example, sometimes you may have to collaborate with occupational therapists, with speech therapists, right? Or sometimes even with regard to medications as well. There are psychiatrists involved. So these are the different specialists we collaborate with. Again, our role isn't just working individually, and it's a team effort, you can see. So even within the school, we have our own department. It's called the Student Success Department, where we have learning support teachers that we work with as well. So for example, they may create an IEP, individualized education plan, and then we create a care plan. And we see how that fits together, right? So we have well-being as well as learning needs catered to. Besides that, we also work with a crisis management team, right? And this could be in certain cases where there may be more intense cases you're working with at school or emergency situations. There's also a policy that's developed there, and as a team together, we work around those policies. There's also an inclusion policy that our entire team has been worked with to see where we can improve from where it has been. Now we can truly be more inclusive. Besides that, we also have
workshops. Workshops for families.
Yeah, we have workshops for families, for teachers.
I was going to say that bit about us, we're often asked to look at policies and procedures, and I think that's very important to me because I think I want that neurodivergent voice. If you're talking about being inclusive, we've moved to be in there. We used to be on the DIJB committee as well, and that spurred us on to do work in the community, not just in the school. I think we're both people that like spill out of school, don't we? And because our learning has just taken a real role, hasn't it? And our understanding and our connections have grown. But I think that part that we're not just small people in a small room with the door shut and it opens, we're very much spilling out into the fabric of the school. And it was a big thing for me because when I joined Rhea, the school had only just started having counsellors, hadn't it?
It was the first year of counsellors.
Yeah.
That was 3 years ago.
Yeah. So I really wanted to, what I wanted to bring is, hey, we want to be visible.
Correct.
Not this secret person you go and see if you can't behave or you have a problem. We now have young people that skip. People say, where are you going? Because the parents always say, I'd like to go to counselling, but they might feel a bit embarrassed or I don't want to. We have people skipping out the classrooms, recommending that other people should go to counselling. It's out there, isn't it? I mean, it's some people, more with the families, it's probably a little bit like, but for the kids, they see what it is. They see their learning. They love the opportunity to talk about themselves, to understand about themselves, to figure themselves out. What a beautiful gift to give somebody,
That's what I said. You're doing an incredible job because that voice coming from you will make a lot of difference because you have been there, done that. So you know how it is. And you raising your voice that, no, this is how it should be, can create a difference. So,
and professionally, that's changed for me because when I first graduated as a special ed teacher, I was told, you scrape by, whatever you do, don't tell anyone that you're dyslexic because no one will employ a dyslexic teacher. And now I'm literally here in India standing on stage saying, I'm autistic, I'm this, and, this is my way of being and this is how I interact. And I do see teachers that go, parents a little bit shocked by that, and I do try and say, it's not something to be afraid of.
Correct.
It's something to, to honour and to be interested in and to seek to understand. And I think we have quite a big dynamic as well. So I think I think we work together on that, don't we? Spilling out, definitely spilling out, being more visible, making mental health something that people want to talk about.
Exactly.
Not something that is,
oh my God, yeah.
And I think one of the ways it also spills out for me is that for several years, 5 or 6 years now, I've run a social enterprise called Untangling Minds.
Yes, I would love to know about that.
So that is I'm particularly passionate about bringing therapies and awareness, mental health awareness to those people that would normally access it because of maybe a social barrier, maybe a physical barrier, maybe a mental health barrier, believe it or not, or maybe a financial barrier. So, and I can deliver these therapies as and when to support the needs of the people that use the service. So, for example, it might be that I go and do workshops somewhere for a group. Or it might be that I work with a lot of people who've recently left prison, for example. How do you adjust to life? And most people, having worked in prison systems and judicial systems, 99.9, in fact, I've never met someone that isn't neurodivergent. And I'm not saying that's because neurodivergent people commit crimes, not at all. But they are misunderstood, and quite often they fall out of education. Even the way a police interview goes, you know, you can be overwhelmed. You're sitting opposite somebody, you say things that you don't, your style of communication isn't honoured. One of the big things that I do is seek to understand and get clarification all the time. And what I've understood is if you ask people in authority, a little bit about what they're telling you, they're often quite defensive or perceive it as being rude. You know, so these are often barriers to people who want to understand their mental health. They might go to the doctor and then be told something. Try to can you give me a little bit more about? And then no, you know, I'm the expert, and so they fall out of these systems. So I do online therapy mostly at the moment, and face-to-face working with groups for people that wouldn't normally. So that could be, like I say, people from the judicial system. It could be a lot of neurodivergent people or people who learn very differently. And we do it in a way that, like, it suits their way of being. So, for example, if you have a neurodivergent teen and they go to therapy, they're not going to turn up, right? Quite often they're going to forget, they're going to be asleep, whatever. And then your parents, well, he didn't go, he's wasted my money, blah, 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 blah. You know, and then that child doesn't want to go, then that parent, and then the whole idea of therapy is just not accessible. Whereas I don't charge if people don't turn up, and funny enough, they mostly do. And I can do half an hour, I can do that, and always in all of my therapeutic relationships, you can message me in between, you know, and I show up as myself. So I might not answer you if I'm overwhelmed, but I will answer you for sure. I'm thinking of you, and I will have time, and I will answer you, because quite often, you know, when you have an idea where I really need to speak to my therapist, but the next week you've forgotten. So it's so important to have that interaction and have somebody that genuinely cares. And I work with whole families as well. So it's not like if you want to bring your family, and if you want me to help you advocate with your family or your boss, that's another thing I've done. I've gone into companies and spoken to, you know, HRs about, you know, how can we make your workplace more inclusive?
Wow.
I'm at the moment in Students' Mental Health Awareness Week in May, and I will be working with a group from a bank. I'll be working with I'm leading a forum for neurodivergent menopausal women, because it's very difficult for them to be taken seriously or connect with their work, and to raise awareness of when you're menopausal, of which I am, and you often can see because my presentations get louder with hormones or lack of them. You know, suddenly people who've held they've held like positions of responsibility suddenly can't even make a cup of tea, or suddenly fly off the handle, or sweating, and these are things that people don't talk about. So having these like community forums are like a really good place where people can drop it, find allies, and then take that conversation beyond that to their workplace. So there's lots of different ways I reach out, you know, and it is, you know, because it's often for therapy, you know, it's expensive, it can be expensive.
Yes.
You know, I'm in a position where I work with like, you know, with people who have been refugees or displaced people or people resettling. And they don't necessarily have money, and that's okay. You can still write into me. I can still find a place for you. It's not dependent on money, and you will get the standard of care whether you pay me zero or you pay me full whack.
Wow.
The standard of care is the same, and that kind of brings me on to the fact that it's very important that my work, because it's largely independent, is also watched by official bodies. So it makes quite sure that I'm accredited by the British Association of Counselling and Psychotherapists and various other organisations to do with neurodivergence, so that I the people that come to me know that because I follow these ethical standards, because they follow my work, because I have a clinical supervisor that I meet with every month, that the standard of work is a high one, and I have to do a certain amount of professional development, which I love. I love learning.
Wow.
So, so they're getting up to date, and they're knowing that I'm in the right place, the right space, and I have the right credentials, experience, and qualifications to be able to do this job. So I am also monitored. So that's a really, really big thing. And what a beautiful thing that happened last year was I was, for my work with neurominorities, I was given an award by the International Mother Teresa Award.
The Mother Teresa Award. I was going to talk to you about it.
Yeah, and for me, it wasn't really, it was an award out there that was telling me, okay, conversations in India are happening about neurominorities. It was about my work with neurominorities and breaking down barriers to people receiving therapy globally. I got it in India, it was recognised in India, but it's about my work globally. And it was, I was just so proud because it felt like these conversations are happening in India, and it was like an award that said, right, all those families out there who are struggling to be heard, people are listening, people know that these services need to be happening. And I had so many useful conversations and made many, many, many connections. So it was lovely to have that opportunity to, for my voice to be heard, because that's what I want other people's voices to be heard. And then it kind of happened to me. My voice was heard too. So, yeah. And I love that it happened in India because this is my nested country of preference right now. Yeah.
Wow. Fabulous. Fabulous. Commendable. So, to sum this amazingly beautiful conversation today, I would love to have one message that you would like to give to the audience, and then your message as well.
Why?
Or you can have many as well.
So I think for me, the message that I'd like to probably give out is try your best to understand people as they are, right? As whole beings rather than on certain aspects of a particular behavior or any bit that is a lens that you often look through, right? And probably having a more holistic lens in order to seek to understand.
Yeah, that resonates with me. Seeking to understand. And I think you can take that to any situation you're in, Never think you're going to rock up and know the answer, because you never, ever will. And if you think that, then you are breaking down what could be a beautiful journey of learning. The barrier stops there if you know. So just seek to understand, whether it be people, situations, variables, experience,
Fantastic. Amazing. I would love you to speak about, did mention the word in the start that I said neurodiverse and you said
Distinct.
Neurodistinct.
Yeah.
So please emphasize on that. I just loved it. And next time I will address that.
So why I call myself neurodistinct?
No, y'all should be called neurodistinct, and why? Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think you should be, I think it's really important that you rock up and you have your own identity. And my identity can be, I think everybody's identity is flexible, isn't it? I play around with pronouns, for example, because I just think they're a linguistic navigation, and it's not always, I say any pronouns, for example, because I think that there are certain assumptions if you're a man or you're a woman, and I don't think, you need to know. It's not important to who I am, whether I'm male or female. So use any pronouns. And in the same way, I describe myself as neurodistinct because I recognize that I perceive the world, I process the world, I connect with the world distinctly differently to other people, and I always think that to label me autistic or on the spectrum disables me in some way because, I kind of own it, but not in the way that some people use it, because it can be weaponized, or it can be seen as a negative connotation. And for me, it's not. Yes, I've had my struggles But that's about the system, and it's made me strong. I've been lucky to meet allies like Rhea throughout my life that have enabled me to be distinct. Like I said before, if you diverge in it, means like, have I diverged off on the wrong way? No, I was always meant to be distinctly different. And we need different kind of learners in the world, and we have them.
Yes.
So why are we softening some people's voices? You know, everybody's voices are very, very valuable, and everybody's a human being, and everybody, if you took brain scans of everybody's brain would look different.
True.
But I recognise mine is distinctly different, you know, and many people's are distinctly different.
True.
So it's just lovely to look. It's lovely for me to have that opportunity to look at life through a different red lens, and then share that with my allies.
Yes.
Then share with me how they see the world, because then what can only happen is we have a bigger understanding of the world together and the people in it.
Perfectly put in together. So truly said. Thank you so much, both of you, for being with us. And believe me, it was an amazing session. A lot of things that I have also taken back with me. And thank you. Thank you.
And hearing our voices.
Yes, that's the most important. And I would really love our audience to hear y'all and take back a lot of things from y'all. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you too. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.